This is the heavens. This is the earth. There are two holes here, two holes here. And it's through these that the souls of men come. Now look. Plato has to in some way convince us that in the afterworld there is a justice, rationality, and intelligibility. That's what he has to show. And he has to show that that has an impact on this question of what happens to the just man and the unjust man. Because in the Republic he has a great description of the great tyrant. And the great tyrant, the most unjust man, the unjust man is brilliant, has all of the intellectual qualities and capabilities that everyone would admire. Foresight, ability to plan, ability to direct, courage of his convictions, forthrightness, he can bring his plans to fruition. There's only one thing different between the unjust man and the just man: justice. They are equal. They are equal in every respect except that one factor. So therefore Plato also has the second problem. Where do these tyrants come from if there's this idea of reincarnation? And how do you account for the fact that one goes one way and the other goes? They are in fact twins. In terms of qualities and abilities, they're twins. In terms of abilities now, they're exactly alike. So therefore, in the myth of Plato has to go back to this issue and not only tell us what happens to the just man in the next world and the unjust man, he has to return to this issue of the twins. Therefore, going back now, he said, after death, we are brought to the judge. And it's a very interesting place because when you are judged, if you are judged to be a just man, then you go up into the heavens. If you're judged unjust, down you go. Because for everything that you have done that is unjust, you suffer tenfold for each act, and equally well, it's multiplied by 100 years. 10 acts, 1,000 years. Same thing here. 10 great acts, 10 great virtuous acts, the great acts of excellence. 10 times the reward, 100 times. Well, the judge is also here for another purpose. Now, coming up from the journeys into the other world, having faced all of the punishments and all the difficulties, up you come when you've paid off your debt. Up through this second hole. And then you're judged. Judged in a very interesting way because you have to then choose your next reincarnation. And we'll go into the dynamics of the choice for the next reincarnation. Equally well, from the heavens, people then have gained their rewards, and now they too are returning for the judge to pick their next reincarnation. That reincarnation has to be just, you see. This has to be an image of justice. And it has to have it in such a way that we can see that those coming here up from this can be treated fairly with a sense of justice, equally coming down, and those that are going to return to these two regions, of course, must be shown that it is fair and just for them to do so. So let's take a look now. Just like to read one thing about this. Plato has something that has often troubled some people, and therefore I'd like to mention it. He says, however, that there are some people who are so unjust that they'll never come back. And this is the man that he calls the great Ardraios. Because when they go down and they get before the judge, and these people are coming back from the heavens and coming up from the bowels of the earth to be judged, they all get together and they tell stories about where they've been and what they experienced and what they've learned in the two regions, and they trade stories. And every once in a while someone will say, okay, where is the worst of all the tyrants? And they report that every time it looks like he's ready to come back up once again to be judged, that the hole closes and bellows and screams, and the attendants have to come up and pick him up and drag him back down, for his crimes are so heinous that it appears that he will never again come up to the surface and be judged. So that's the extreme case. All right? No return. Now, in terms of symmetry, in the same way, is it possible that there's no return the other way? I mean, is it symmetrical? If there's no return for the worst, all right, the worst tyrant, well, is it possible that there's a tenfold reward for each by 100 years, and the greatest example of pure justice will also have no return? If it's symmetrical. Now, what's curious, this whole issue is quite interesting philosophically, isn't it? Because if it is symmetrical, then this is very clearly a Buddhist principle. Getting off the wheel of reincarnation. This is a Buddhist principle. And if Plato is hinting at that, suggesting it, saying it, well, then that's quite a point to be made for him. And then we'll have to position his writings in one way, if not in another. So that's what's at stake. So, let's go further. After 7 days, they're gathered together, swapping stories, and then on the 8th day they move forward for 4 days on a journey to the very center. And that center, there is a pillar of light. There's a pillar of light. That's luminous, radiant luminosity, pillar of light, and it goes from the tops of the heavens to the bottom. It is the core that runs through all reality. And there's also through this the spindle of necessity. And around that spindle of necessity, around the spindle of necessity, he locates all of the planets, the whole, for him, the whole universe. And the outermost ring of that is the 8th ring, which is the realm, sometimes called the realm of the fixed stars. A sound is uttered. One sound is uttered. And each of the heavenly bodies that moves around in its orbit plays off that one sound, and as a consequence, there is a harmony of the spheres of the entire universe. The whole entire universe is a harmony of the spheres around this pillar of light that is carried from the extremes of heaven and earth. And therefore, you see, he's telling us in a very nice way